Well, here we are again.
Are you a stoic?
Um, wow. Am I a stoic? To help me define a stoic?
Many facets, but uh, basically, you're not pulled to the emotional fringe. There's a I view stoicism as resiliency, essentially, and Marcus Aurelius, and I never can pronounce the other. There are a few well-known Stoic writers, Epictetus, however you say it.
Epic,
Uh, you
never
can't
mind.
say it either. Yeah.
Well, no, I can't. I can't. I can say other Stoics names. Seneca. I can say
Seneca.
Seneca,
Sure. Yes.
like the apple juice.
Is there a Seneca apple juice?
Oh, yeah. I guess it was just me drinking Seneca apple juice then.
Like recently, or this is a
No, no,
childhood thing?
no, no, not recently. I don't think I'm necessarily a stoic. I think I'm prone to emotion in certain things, and I'm prone to like stability and fatalism and other things. So I would say that overall I probably don't exhibit a philosophy of stoicism in my life or mind. You're not buying it?
What are your thoughts? Because what we're hoping to get perspective on is like stoicism, more corporate culture, and what is a successful culture. And I'll start with this. This is how I see it. I sent you this morning. I don't know if you had a chance to go through it, but CNBC. I don't know how does CNBC come down in terms of if zero is um, let's say like QAnon or that level,
Yeah,
and five is like Bard and Chat GPT and
yeah,
the generative engines,
yeah.
and 10 is your next door neighbor,
Uh huh.
um, talking about trash pickup or something that you can verify. Where does CNBC fall on that scale? Because I don't know.
Oh, I That's a good question. The thing about reading a news article, this is an article or something on video.
It's an article.
The thing about reading a news article in 2023 is it can be difficult to understand that what you're reading is a summary or a rehashing of other things that is designed to sell you the things that are around it on the page. So I don't really have a problem with whatever the content in the source is, because unless it was original reporting by CNBC, if CNBC went out and asked Terry, do you feel that stoicism is at an all-time high in office culture? And Terry says yes, that's accurately reporting what Terry said. Otherwise, it's just sort of like a study that Terry published said that so and so thing, and then CNBC repeats the thing. So I mean, I think that they're perfectly reasonable. Now, if it says CNBC, comment section or commentator or the opinion section, forget it, man. That's like anybody can write that stuff, and that's not particular to one outlet. Anybody that's got comment, I see Reuters, the wire service, which is journalism, and then you'll occasionally get Reuters breaking views, and I'm like, I don't want anything to do with this article.
Yeah. The new thing that I've seen, and from the New York Times of all places, is reporting on like hiring probably some $10 an hour intern to dig up Bob 00012 on Twitter, who has 7 followers, who made some outlandish comment, finding a couple Bobs, and then saying that this is reporting on that outlandish comment as though that's a thing. That is a very not rare tactic employed by what were in my mind, reputable reputable sources for news.
It's a tough time to be a news hound. I mean, there's never been a lot of money in journalism, and there's still not a lot of money in journalism, and there's a lot of ways to lose your job, and there's a lot of other things that people who have the skills that it requires for journalism can go do for more money than journalism today. So journalism is not in any way dead or even threatened.
Well,
The
you didn't even mention the main threat to journalism, and that's that there are 330 million potential journalists. Now, take a whole bunch of those out because there's a technology has distributed the capability of journalism to you and me and everybody else.
I think that that's true. The point that anybody can do reporting is true to a point, but that doesn't cover any version of investigative reporting. It doesn't cover any version of following a story over the long term, piecing together who the characters are. You know, like Bob Woodward style stuff is not really under threat from anybody. Yes, sure, anybody can do that stuff and publish it, and uh, the problem is not so much that the people that can do it can't, like, you're not the person that's going to do long form journalism. The threat to them is not somebody else reporting their story. The threat to them is there is no way to make money from doing a long form investigative report on a topic that requires a lot of actual research and background, a long term commitment to doing that research, being told no a bunch of times, trying to ferret out truth. Like, these things take a consistent effort over time on, medium and large stories. And that that threat is exactly the same as it's ever been, which is it takes a lot of time, is inexpensive and hard to do that. So I think I don't think that the crumbling institutions of media, or the crumbling is not even the right word. It's more like they're being crumbled and then rebuilt into a different form. Is
See,
even
I think there are recent examples of Bob Woodward Bob Woodward style journalism, like very recent examples from Matt Taibbi and Jeff Schellenberger, Barry Weiss. Just did a pretty extensive. Granted, they were fed a bunch of information, but very extensive exposés on the role of government and suppressing and working hand in hand with Twitter and some of the big social media and tech platforms to censor whatever you think of that term and however you think that went. There were recent examples of that. I think independent journalism, whether it's the folks that I just mentioned or Glenn Greenwald or um, the Fox guy, Mr. Carlson, just went to Twitter after he was fired from Fox. I think independent journalism is probably the biggest threat to the institutions, the institutional players.
I have no doubt in my mind that there's a threat to institutional news reporting. I don't think that journalism is under threat. I mean, so I open up. I've never
Agreed.
heard of Matt Taibbi. I don't know who this is. I don't know anything about him. I open up. I Google his name. Open up the first thing that comes up. I've got Racket News that appears to be a picture of his face, and I don't see any actual ads anywhere on the page. I don't know or care how they get money. I see locks, which tells me that somebody has to be paying to get some of the articles.
Substack.
Yeah, great. I mean, so like I'm not looking at ads. I'm looking at a person who's writing stuff for money. So
Yeah.
the model is completely different than selling reporting to somebody who's not the journalism the journalist I follow most is in a really 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 narrow space, and it's a newsletter based thing, and it's also on Substack, and there's also a paid option, and it just warms the cockles of my heart anytime I see somebody out there like fighting the good fight, if you can call it that. I mean, I think the people that bother to do that have to look at it as fighting the good fight, because it's like drudgery of work, and then you feel like it's all worthwhile because you found, you know, I'm trying to avoid saying that you dug and dug and dug and you found the truth because that seems too corny. But you at least dug and dug and dug and dug and found some facts and brought some things to light. So I don't know. I love a free press, and I love the fact that there are still people out there that are taking advantage of the free press, and I love that there are still people that are, supporting a free press with things other than just clicks and eyeballs on ads. So I feel pretty good about the current state of journalism. Don't feel quite as good about, network news, but journalism overall seems pretty okay.
Yeah. I, I think we have differing opinions on that. I think there are reasons to be concerned, and if you look at ownership groups behind what were once independent establishments, like the Washington Post is owned by Bezos, and I think there's a lot of corporate influence in the institutional journalism players where like The Intercept, which Glenn Greenwald founded. I don't know if you know his background, really interesting story. Um, but The Intercept ended up running him off because they were, trying to become a for-profit, and they had some shaky relationships that he wasn't comfortable with. So I think that journalism as an institution um, has a credibility crisis, and I think the people who want to do what you're explaining, they may have been there in the institutional sense in the past, but the people who want to do what you're explaining are going independent, and there are examples of that from across the spectrum. Um, and that's who I tend to follow. Although you have to, even there, you have to, because I mean, you get it through institutional journalism as well, but you have to ferret through prisms and lenses and ideologies. And I'm interested in the like policies and the sausage making, like what policies are being passed, who's bringing policies to the floor, what does it mean, how is it being received, those sorts of things. And I think there's a lot of just have to sift through some stuff.
I mean, I was raised on the Washington Post, delivered to the driveway each morning. I was the first one up. I got the paper. I read the paper. Headlines each morning, and then skipped everything except the style section after reading the headlines as I ate my breakfast. And nobody knew at that time what was about to happen to journalism. Nobody knew what the word blog meant. They almost did, but they didn't quite know what the word. It was just on the cusp. And then I studied journalism extensively in high school. I tried to find a communications or journalism program, but there wasn't one that was, where I wanted to go. So I ended up in an English program before I ended up in econ. So my history with journalism ended up on a pretty positive for me. For me,
Yeah.
like it ended up on a positive direction because I didn't go into journalism, and it would have been basically the worst possible time to become a journalist or be a degreed journalist or reporter or anything like that. It was, and the risk was very, very high that I would end up, writing stuff based on whatever I thought was, sounded nice and was entertaining. And I would have fallen right down into the hole of, newsertainment blogger right as it was getting popular. I would feel like it was going to be a big thing because I was getting eyeballs on it. And then I would realize that the business is not writing the stuff. The business is selling ads, and that was a struggling business model, and it would have been a total disaster for me. And we would absolutely not be sitting right here because you'd be like, I hate that guy who just shoots his mouth off in some column somewhere and has been relegated to a forgotten daily.
So fun fact, I don't know that I've ever told anyone this. I applied to, I have a undergraduate from Indiana University,
Mm-hmm.
and I applied to their master's in journalism program and got rejected.
You know who gets rejected from a master's in journalism now?
Well, probably still me, but
I'm assuming anybody who can't afford to pay tuition, and otherwise no one.
yeah, I don't that. What is that? One of the top two or three worst investment degrees that a person could possibly go into.
I didn't know it at the time, but it turned out that econ tends to be a very high earning degree, and I still don't know the mechanism behind that because it's not a large industry to be practicing the thing that you studied. I think it's backwards causation. So people that are interested in economics are also interested in financial attainment. So on average, people that are studying econ are just pre-inclined to go and make money because money is the thing that interests them and is important to them.
And I think there's a probably a latent intellectual curiosity with that cohort of people who want to study econ that um, probably tend to do better, probably had better academic backgrounds that are interested. Most. I'm going to abort on that topic. I'm gonna pull out
So
anyway.
I want to know. I want to know if my take that journalism is fine is that a stoic take?
That's someone who, when they checked out, however many years ago, and checked into fatherhood and married life and that thing, the status has changed from where you left off. So there's an awareness paradigm that has shifted on you. It is. I think your takes are generally stoic. I think you are. Uh, Although I'm the newer or emerging views that I get from you are more nihilistic and sort of you know damn the torpedoes ish.
I think if I had to pick between stoicism and nihilism, I'd put myself more into nihilism. Sorry, not nihilism, not denialism. I
Yeah,
would say I'm generally not. I'm not in much denial.
no. So anyway, we that was a fun detour that I unfortunately started with asking for um, guidance on the veracity of CNBC, but
Yeah, there you go.
uh, I'll take the L for that one. This article, I do think there's something to it because I've seen anecdotally, and oh, are you hearing that?
Oh, that's the nationwide emergency
Yeah,
alert system. I'll get one soon.
I don't know where it's coming from. I guess
It
it's
could
my
be it could
phone.
be anywhere in your house. Everybody's going to get one. It's
Yeah,
queued up for sometime today for me to
220.
get it.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 220. Did you hear that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
Okay.
heard it. Well, I heard it at your house. It's going to go off at my house, um, in many, many, many places momentarily.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a CNBC article that we're referencing here, and the headline of the article is "Workers are the unhappiest that they've been in 3 years," and this is from October 2nd of 2023. Workers are the unhappiest they've been in 3 years, and it can cost the global economy 8.8 trillion. That's the part that I'm interested in. Um, I forgot that was happening. Um, anyway, that's the part that I'm interested in for this discussion is stoicism versus emotionalism. Not that those are perfectly crafted comparisons, but the concept of culture, corporate culture, and what does it mean? What's the right corporate culture not to lose $8.8 trillion? Anyway, the article, and you brought this up earlier as a point of contention with articles like this. The article references a survey from Bamboo HR. That doesn't sound legit to me, but Bamboo HR is the source of this, and they found that job satisfaction has had a steady decline since 2020. I kind of get that. 60,000 employees at over 1,600 companies were surveyed between January 2020 and June 2023. So that's the hypothesis that we're evaluating is corporate culture obviously matters, and I think it matters beyond the sort of CYA jargon that makes its way into human resources manuals. And I think it makes its way. It is I think it takes a life of its own. And I'm curious as a, if the two bookends are stoicism and emotionalism, where everyone's emoting and that sort of thing. And I don't know that I've captured those categories correctly, but what is the impact on corporate culture on productivity? And has it been your experience that it's been done right, or that it gets done mostly right? Has that evolved or devolved over time? Um, a lot to take in there, but that's the meat of the discussion.
I've never associated corporate work with happiness per se. I've associated corporate work with you go to work, and if your job does the things that you need a job to do, meaning it feeds you and it allows you to have a good weekend, then you will be more happy in the life that is not the job. And if the job doesn't let you have those things, you will generally be unhappy in that job. Now, I personally, in my work, have tried to be happy in the work itself. So I've liked my work more or less my whole career. There have been parts that were, I don't think there's ever been a time where I didn't have a lot of stuff about work I didn't like and a lot of stuff about work I did like at the same time. And it's always been, if there's stuff I don't like about work, then it's difficult to say that the work or my job makes me happy, in the sense that it may make me happy to, uh, I don't know, it may make me happy to learn how to do a video interview, or it may make me happy to have a really successful panel interview, or it may, make me happy that we were able to pivot from everything being in person to having some successful online stuff during the pandemic. Those things make me happy. uh, but it's always still in the back of my mind, like, oh, I really don't want to interact with so and so today, or man, I'm going to get another email I don't want to answer, or crap, I'm on deadline, or like a million different things that are held. So anything good that made me happy was always partnered with something that was making me not happy at the same time. So then, but that ends up as a wash, because I was also falling back on, pays the bills, the hours are fine. But the pay has always been relatively good. I feel like, job satisfaction was high. So I end up disconnecting job satisfaction and happiness to say I can be satisfied in a job that doesn't necessarily make me directly happy from the job. I think the job that made me happiest might have been landscaping. I was just outside all day, but
So,
I was like physically happy because I enjoyed doing outside work all day. It just felt nice.
so that's a thing, right? Like that's a new thing. A lot of let's say traditional, I hate this term, but it's the way it's positioned. Traditional men are starting to leave corporate jobs and take manual labor jobs. Like, not, you know, I still think they're manual labor jobs of choice and of luxury, but the working outdoors with your hands is a thing.
I have always been, I've always had dirty fingernails out of luxury, not out of necessity. So, I mean, there's never been a time that that my labor in the sunshine was putting food on the table. So I don't feel like I've ever gotten a true sense of what it means to be a laborer. Um, I will say that that awakening that you're talking about, realizing that sitting in an office in a chair staring at a screen is less satisfying than being outside and using your hands to make something or accomplish work. I feel like when I decided to go do manual labor jobs, I was only looking at two things. I was looking at what was available for work, because I was a teenager when I was doing this stuff. It was what was available for work, what's it pay, and am I capable of it? And I could make like 35 or 40% more doing manual labor than waiting tables or doing retail work. And those were the like, I wasn't creative about this. I just picked whatever was right in front of my face. And the stuff that paid significantly more dollars per hour was doable, and I didn't mind the work. So I was like, why would I take the job that is going to pay me less to, fold clothes and run a cash register? if I'm perfectly capable of going and, planting plants and spreading mulch and cutting grass?
You know what my first 4-pay job was?
Umpire?
Oh, oh God, I wish. I
Can I keep
was
guessing?
sure. You'll never guess this ever.
Fence painter,
No,
assembler.
no,
Did it involve automotive repair of some kind?
no.
Was it mechanical in nature?
It could be.
Were you paid by the day?
No,
Were you by yourself?
no. I
Was
wish
it
I. I wish I was.
was it at a small business?
Yes.
I'm out of. I have no more guesses. I don't know. Like train wheel cleaner. I'm picturing like this little kid who's got like, all right, Terry, you've got the little hands. Get in there and get the nooks and crannies.
It was kind of that. I was 14 years old, and I was almost 15, but I was 14 years old, and I blew fiberglass insulation in chicken houses, in the roof of chicken houses, like
I
these.
wouldn't have been able to get to the chicken house, but I could have actually gotten to something like not, maybe I wouldn't have got quite to fiberglass insulation blowing, but I think I could have gotten close to that if I'd have kept trying.
Yeah, yeah. I smoked on occasion, smoked cigarettes then, and didn't wear my mask all the time. So I'm sure I lost a few years in that summer in
Yeah, but
that
how do
job.
you feel now?
I feel great. I
That's
feel
what's
fantastic.
important.
Yeah.
That's what's important. It's not the years in the life, it's the life in the years.
So anyway, this CNBC article says that the biggest cause of job satisfaction is unfair treatment at work and a couple other things. And then Srikumar Rao, the author of Happiness at Work, tells CNBC that the most common complaint they hear is a loss of control. Employees that feel like they've lost control. The pandemic showed us at a visceral level just how little control we have over our lives and our careers. It's hard to make peace with that kind of realization. So that's a good jump off point, no?
I mean, I feel I have my favorite my favorite word related to happiness is agency,
For sure.
which is just the feeling that you're in control of what's happening around you.
So
Not
that
not
is,
not actual control, a feeling that you are in control.
yeah, because none of, so this is just a day for derailing. I'm just going to lean into it. So I have thought a lot lately, and I don't know why. I hope it's not an omen, how fragile civilization is in terms of we're like one power grid failure away from madness, from like Walking Dead. I mean, I think about that a lot. And I think of what made me think of that is you saying we have the illusion of being in control. This is all very thinly held together.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't like that. I like to think that we control our destiny and we're in charge.
Well, to some degree, so this is, I'm not sure what school of thought this is because I haven't read enough comparative philosophy to have discovered who already has these thoughts and has put a label on it. But I am certain that there is a philosophy around uh, micro control or micro agency. So you do have control over small things at all times that are internal facing. So if I'm rendered unconscious, laying face down. No, I can't be unconscious because then I'll just be unconscious. If I am rendered immobile and laying face down in the grass for an extended period of time, let's say I'm starving to death, I, I have control over whether I'm going to sit there and stare at the blade of grass and inspect the blade of grass in front of my eye, or whether I'm going to, bemoan my situation to a point. I mean, eventually your brain will just be like, I need food, and I'm in panic mode and I'm done. But up to a point, like you have control over thoughts and over how you're reacting to things, and that is objectively true. Like right up into the point where your body like breaks down and fails.
So that's one of the big tenets of stoicism that you just laid out is most of our anxieties and our tensions and our worries are not from external events themselves. It's our response to them.
Well, I
And
do strongly feel that.
yeah. And so I think um, that's what I'm interested in corporate culture, because I know anecdotally, and we wrestle with quantifying things in our discussions quite a bit, but I know anecdotally stoicism is in not in high demand in the vast majority of cultures that I've been in, except the german the German environment there in Germany had that feel. So,
Extreme intensity is a very, very common American corporate culture.
and so that is what I want to get at. That's the headline of the CNBC article. I feel like is there is your now this is globally. There's your 8.8 trillion lost. If your culture, regardless, and we talked about this last week for me personally, if there's dissonance between what I think I am, what I want to be internally, and how I act, how I behave, I'm a wreck. And I feel like the same thing happens for a company culturally. It doesn't matter how many fun uh, cultural posts you put on LinkedIn or what the jargon is in the HR manual. If it's a train wreck, if it's a hot mess internally, and I've seen this, if it's a hot mess internally, the company is not as profitable as it could be. Things don't get done as well as they could. People aren't as creative. People aren't as productive because it's a hot mess internally. And I think
What's
that the layer of dissonance just adds, in addition to the stress, adds a layer of struggle to that.
what's the best letter grade you would give any culture you've experienced in a professional project that lasted over 18 months?
I
You have to be so that here are the rules. You got to be directly involved in it. The project had to have a term, or the project or job or whatever else. This grade had to apply to at least an 18-month time period. So no, like we had an amazing quarter and everybody was doing awesome, so A plus. Uh, those are the rules. You were involved in 18 months or more. Letter grade A through F.
I had not been, this was almost 15 years ago now. I had not been in the industrial world for long. And I got hired by a division of an English company in their combustion controls division. And I'll just leave it at that. So it was my first sort of heavy industry exposure.
Mm-hmm.
I would never have left that company if I hadn't been moved to there was some pull. We had the company had that I worked for had been purchased in an acquisition by this English company, and there was pull to assimilate them into the sort of normal corporate structure of the English company in the U.S. And so there was a pull to sort of break up the way we went to market. And the manager that I had was a former Annapolis Naval Academy graduate, MBA, flew in both Iraq wars. Loved this guy. I don't mind saying his name. It's Ken Everell. I've never worked for a better manager. I would never have left that company. I would have stayed there to my detriment because I loved what I was doing. I liked the work. I liked, now part of it was being exposed for the first time. Ideologically, I had some pre-held conditions or pre-held beliefs about power generation specifically, but heavy industry generally. So being exposed to that, the people, seeing how this actually was the heartbeat of this country, the culture of the people that I worked with, they were really smart, capable wrench turners that were just awesome. My boss was awesome. I never would have left. I miss that. I'll never get that again.
So
So
that was an A.
A plus.
And how long were you there?
Um, all told, almost 5 years.
So it meets both criteria. I would be hard pressed to name anything that was more than a B that I've worked on.
So I can say definitively, I liked the Toyota work too, but I made that, and I don't mind. I don't mean that from a place of ego. I mean, I overtook what my job was, and that's kind of when I started I've always done this. I've done more. I made it something that it wasn't. And when we did the presentation on machine learning for robotic, the relationship between path and premature motor wear. When we did that, that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing work wise. So I enjoyed that work, but the rest of it, culture wise, B is generous. I'll just say that.
Automotive industry is a tough place to go find a positive culture, even above a C.
Here's the other part too. Um, and this is not trivial, and this is you're going to get this theme from me over and over. You already have, so I'm not worried about belaboring the point because it's a theme. Industrial companies today know mechanical systems. They, however, also understand that the future of everything is in some form or fashion digital, and using applied math and applied statistics and software and tools and technologies that they're not used to. So people are very, very, very territorial in especially American industrial companies, trying to protect what little plot of ground they've got, because they know that the hounds, the software hounds and the math hounds and the digital hounds, which they don't know, are nipping at their heels. So, and that's not a level thing. That's top to bottom. And folks are very territorial. So there's an extra element of that. I think also, I've seen where there's you've heard the expression "trying to squeeze blood from a turnip." I think
I prefer the term water from a stone in my day to day, but it's blood from a turnip is a little more graphic.
yeah, but I think there's also an inflection point for a lot of industrial companies, and this is I'm I've been in the industrial world for a long time now, so this is what I've seen over and over. It's an inflection point because try harder no longer works, and you have shareholders' expectations are way up here, and try harder doesn't get you there. So there's just pressure galore, and there's not there are, again, it's that whole it's the tapestry of problems in industrial America today, where there's such a gulf between what these people who are trained on mechanical systems understand technologically, and they may know words on a PowerPoint, but it's different in running a business. And so there are all these really strong pressures for performance metrics that you have to really be innovative to meet, and there's a gap. And so that impacts culture as well.
I think that stoicism has a role in defusing and I don't know, defusing and de-escalating extreme thinking in exactly the point that you're making. So um, I think the Stoic point of view is that it's not an inflection point; it's an inflection line or an inflection plane or an inflection. Like
Trend line.
we're not jumping to the next thing. We are slouching steadily into the next thing, and that's just the state of progress. And so either it's funny now because I'll talk to people that are entering the space and are very eager, and I would call them bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I think that the thing that's starting to not starting the thing that's standing out every time I talk to somebody that's sort of a new entrant, like you're talking about when you entered, coal-fired power plant uh, industry. There's always somebody else who's eager and ready to transform things, and it's never going to be a huge number of people, because there's always going to be a bunch of incumbents who who are satisfied and they know the old way, and the people with the fire in their gut trying to change things and upset the apple cart will always work best when they're sort of partnered with people that are stable, conservative, content, but not necessarily complacent, and are still looking to change things or improve stuff, even though they already like they're already established, right? Like I don't have anything to prove to industry now. Personally, I don't feel that I have something to prove, but I'm still interested in solving problems because I it's something I like to do and I find satisfying. Whereas, a founder who is going to, they've got an idea for technology that they want to bring to factories. It's highly software based. They want to go find investors. They're coming from a position of feeling that they have a point to prove, as opposed to they are part of collective growth, right? And realizing that the growth will be there with or without you. The industry will probably be the same with or without you. Uh, Not so much to say that nothing matters, like going to work and enjoying yourself and working hard each day and getting good results still matters, but the the idea that there's going to be this individual flashpoint that's going to set me apart from everybody else as the main pioneer in a space, I think for most people that doesn't necessarily apply.
Agreed. Agreed. But I think there are that pioneer in the space is the far right tail. I think there's a number of places along the distribution to plug in with digital tools or
Yeah.
incremental improvement digitally that across an enterprise make that enterprise a pioneer holistically. And I think that's the part that has been missing in my career journey from a culture standpoint is again we've talked about this several times, is the concept of well, I want to purchase the software tool or purchase this thing, and that's my foray into being digitally savvy.
Hmm.
That's just a means, that's a vehicle, and maybe not even a great vehicle. It could just be it
Right.
could just be part it could, you just could be buying the wheel or the muffler. You don't know, it's just a component. The vehicle itself is a cultural approach to database digital based decision making. And I think you don't have to be a pioneer in any one of those areas, but you have to be committed to everybody is going to be incrementally better at their function using data and applied math and applied statistics. And then that's where the big gains in profitability and improvement happen in an enterprise.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an American corporate example, even in industry that's doing this the way you describe. I have foreign companies. I mean, I think that Keyence Corporation out of Japan tend to exhibit those things. I'll come back to what these companies do, but Keyence does it. Um, Bosch, Rexroth, particularly of all companies, I think that they've released a bunch of stuff that's actual product that is putting forward-looking ideas. And like at this point, if you live in the future in your mind, it can be frustrating, or it can be very difficult to find any satisfaction with anything that actually comes to market from a large company, because you may just be saying, like, my counterpoint to Bosch has put out forward-looking progressive product in the industrial control space. My own counterpoint to that is they're accepting the reality that there is no such thing as a universal walled Bosch garden where everything you buy is from Bosch. So accepting reality, it doesn't necessarily deserve an award for willingness to stop banging your head into the wall, fighting something that will never happen. But that's if you live in the future. If you live in today, great. I have this product that 2 years ago I couldn't get. Now it's here. I'm happy. The other one that jumps out at me is Hexagon. Hexagon and Keyence are both in quality and measurement, as well as engineering services, as well as software. It's sort of they're these hidden business to business only engineering expertise companies, and they happen to have a bunch of specific product lines around
I'm
sort of
very familiar with Keyence. They do a lot
yeah.
of vision systems and laser
Yep.
measurement systems and that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
and they have a huge engineering services division that's not particularly active in the United States either. So we don't see that as much here. We see mostly the inspection stuff from them, but there's a lot of other pieces to that company. And the thing that impresses me about all of them is that at scale they are doing stuff that is consistently impressive and gets better year after year, as opposed to fits and starts, or like there'll be a big push for something, and then it sort of gets rolling, and then it falls flat, and then there's a shift in people, and then they all try and do something, and they kind of sort of do something, and then that falls flat, and there's a little bit of back rolling, and it's not one step forward, two steps back, but it's two steps forward, one step back, and not seeing two steps forward, one step back, but instead seeing persistent incremental progress towards goals that don't really have a lot of enemies with the goal, and then doing that, over a 10 or 20 year time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the key. Is it a discipline? And um, I think a lot of folks get disillusioned when they try to be everything to everyone as a first market approach, as opposed to just doing something really well,
Yeah.
whether it's building connectivity into your traditional product base, or a partnership with a CSP, and making storage of your asset data easier. I think, and I think this is a consultancy um, trap, is that the consultancies try to convince industrial companies to build these big, gigantic platforms, these big, monstrous platforms. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. And for the people that are sophisticated enough to leverage a platform, they're buying Microsoft and Amazon and IBM and tools that they can buy and not pay your margin unless you're doing something from a functionality standpoint that they can't do. So I think there are the as you described, the companies who really do well with it are doing something, and they're going to do that really well. Then they'll find the next area and the next area, and then before long they have somewhat of a holistic approach to the process.
I think it's about, the holistic side of it is you have to have a lot of different somethings that you're good at, and they're tied together by some cohesive glue. So if the overall vision for your company is, I mean, like I'll flip it the other way. If you don't have digital denial across the company, like if your executive staff is not in digital denial, then it's easier to drive towards, hey, we're all on the digital transformation wagon together here, and we're all going to be going this direction. And if there's a place where software is the answer, then software is the answer, and everything we do is moving towards that. If there's a combination of it, like I think the philosophy that if I can wave a magic wand and I'm in charge of a giant, Fortune 50 multinational, my philosophy is it's still just continuous improvement, and you can't do continuous improvement without digital. So the next 20 years of this company, whatever it is across the whole company, is going to be transformation is a journey, not a destination. It's going to take time, and it's going to take all of the same principles that have always been accurate and applied to how do you make it a little bit better every day, and take that approach, as opposed to the shiny object syndrome of, if only we apply digital, then we're going to solve all of our problems. There's no end. There's not a finish line. It is a it is a never ending process.
And that's what the Japanese manufacturers call what, pokeyoke,
Yeah, Pokeyoke. Yep.
the pokeyoke process, and they will throw a lot of money at that if you can make a compelling case on how you can improve something by automating it or by upgrading the equipment or process in some way. They will invest in that.
It's amazing to me that starting in the 70s, the United States collaborated very closely with Japan, mostly company to company, in attempting to take the things that Japan was great about manufacturing and inject that into American manufacturers, both culture and ideological and procedural and operational. And for the most part, the gap hasn't closed that much. So there really is not any indication that American companies or Japanese companies in America are operating the way that Japanese companies in the 70s, put up as the ideal for how you would manufacture. I mean, this all kind of comes back to the Toyota production system and the Toyota way. So that stuff, it just didn't really click, which is which is wild. And I think watching what happens in the largest manufacturing economies over the last 10 years and going forward the next 10 years, watching the big manufacturers and what they do is it's going to continue to be the same story of it's not the same in Japan as it is in Germany, as it is in the United States, as it is in Korea, as it is in China. Right. And I wish I could just put a tidy little bow on how each of those cultures manufactures. The one I have the hardest time with is how do American manufacturers make as much as they do? Because I mean, contrary to popular belief, the United States makes an
Still,
enormous amount of product. We're the number
still
two.
build a lot of stuff here. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the number two manufacturing economy, despite what you may have heard to the contrary.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Unimate, the original robotic arm that
Mm-hmm.
was sold after striking out here largely, literally, was sold to Kawasaki. In Japan through the 80s, that technology and others had 70% of the world's production robots
Yeah,
in Japan. And that's fascinating to me. And
and robot sales have taken a nosedive in the United States, whereas in China, still going gangbusters. And I'll pull the numbers and put it in the show notes. But that it's the United States is generally not investing in robotics as classified by the industry. But keep in mind that robotics is classified by the industry as little cars that drive themselves around a factory floor and arms, right? So
no,
if you take a broader view of what's robotics, then it's much easier to give the United States more credit.
automated systems. Yeah, but back to stoicism, I think what we just went through in the corporate sense, I think stoicism is whether or not someone ascribes to the philosophy of stoicism. I think entrepreneurs have to be stoic, and I think, and this is my thesis for whatever this is worth. I think that that's kind of the point that I wanted to make with this whole discussion is I think there are different skill sets. There are different a person who is wired to be an entrepreneur will never be happy in a corporate environment culturally ever. And I think the skills that serve them well, stoicism and others serve them well in entrepreneurship are detriments in corporate culture. I think there's a and I don't know if this is emerging, but it's something that I've seen recently. I think there is a trend towards dependency in corporate culture, regardless of what people say, regardless of what companies' messaging is and traits that they say they want to select for. There's a need for dependency. So just good enough to move the process incrementally further as a big amoeba. But I think entrepreneurs think in different. They paint in different colors. Their palette is different. They want to do things now and build fast and move quickly and innovate. And I think stoicism's part of that. I don't think they ever really find homes in corporate culture.
Give me an example because I take the opposite reading, which is if you're stoic and you're not inclined to emotion, where does where does the where does that sort of steady rudder have to do with move fast and break stuff?
So um, I'll read some of this article, and I don't know anything about this. I've never seen this journal or this blog or whatever it is, but it's called intellectualtakeout.org. But it's a really interesting take on stoicism and entrepreneurship. And this is the take of the author. Um, Having both, to what you just said, having both, cultivating resilience and a sense of urgency. There's more to succeeding as an entrepreneur than just thinking differently. Of course, you need resilience and a sense of urgency, and that's where stoicism can help. And they go. I don't want to go. I don't want to read this article. The article is interesting, but one of the stories that the author references here is Thomas Edison. One of his factories burned down in 1940. This is from a book from Ryan Holiday, who's a modern day writer about the Stoics. He's a really interesting follow on Instagram, by the way. But in this book called "The Obstacle Is the Way," he tells a story about Thomas Edison's factory burning to the ground and Edison telling his son, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." And his kid, pushed back, and Thomas Edison said, it's okay. We've just got rid of a lot of rubbish. So I think it's that same concept with stoicism, in an entrepreneurial sense, that you don't respond. The external events themselves are not what you're responding to, or not what cause you problems. It's your response to them. And I think that's a trait that you have to have as an entrepreneur, in addition to being able to maintain a sense of urgency. So you have to move fast, you have to build quickly, you have to, sort of break stuff, and iterate in considerably faster than you would in a corporate environment. And I think that there's a mindset that lends itself to those traits.
And that's the stoic mindset.
Part of it, yeah. Or it's just a person that is intrinsically who they are, and it's not ascribing to stoicism per se, but they have those characteristics. I don't think you see, I don't know this. I know some founders. I know some of them are very meticulous and hands-on. I know quite a few founders, actually. They're very meticulous and hands-on, and it's their homemade bread. It's their cake. It's their course. So they're obviously have an interest, an interest in how it goes on the day to day, and at very minute detail, at very granular levels. But they're also very resilient, like can handle things that get out of pocket, because that's just baked into what starting a business is. And I think that is, again, whether or not one ascribes to the notion of stoicism, those characteristics, whether intrinsic to the person or it's a discipline that one grows, you have to have that.
I wanna come back and do teaching stoicism as a recurring bit, where I present you a series of scenarios and options for the most stoic option, in order to both apply it to corporate culture and get a crash course on what constitutes stoicism
So
for my own education.
we've got is it AI? That's a game we should play on
Yeah, is it
occasion.
AI? Yep.
Is it stoic?
Is it stoic?
Is
Can we
it
call it stoic or not?
stoic or not?
Yeah.
We don't have time to get to it, but the article that I sent you from Harvard Business Review, I think it's kind of a benchmark article, but it's basically talking about companies, and it supports the point that the CNBC piece brought up, is that companies, and I feel like we're not breaking any news with corporate culture matters. I feel like this is anybody that might hear this would be like, yeah, of course, but how well does it get executed? And I think this Harvard Business Review article, it's from February of 2016. It's an interesting article, talking a lot about corporate culture.
2016 was a good year for articles in HBR about emotional meaning in the workplace, and they had no idea what was coming. They had no idea.
What do you mean?
Just, I mean, 4 years later, nobody was in the workplace anymore.
Oh
Physically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The
it's interesting
virtual
to look back
workplace.
and think about how little they knew then. And what's the next thing? Like, what's the next one going to come around? There's always one. I think that's stoic. All right, I'm going to write stoic or not, and we'll revisit. Is it AI? What are we talking about tomorrow?
We'll have game days. We'll have
Game
game
day.
days where it's just
Every day. I'm an entrepreneur type. Every day is game day for me.
tomorrow is interview day.
Interview day. Who do we have coming up?
His name is Soren Darich, and
Soren
he is
Darich, the most
um,
the most interesting man in Terry's world.
yeah, he's the Dos Equis guy, and he's the Louisville, Kentucky Dos Equis guy. Very
You
interesting
heard.
guy.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.
Bye, Terry.